You're not even my real mother. Don't make this any harder than it already is." The words hit me like a physical blow as I stood in the driveway, my weathered suitcase at my feet. Rain threatened from dark clouds overhead, matching the storm in my heart. Jacob, the boy I had raised since he was 7, wouldn't even look me in the eyes anymore. Behind him, his wife, Vanessa, stood in the doorway of their mansion, arms crossed, a thin smile of satisfaction on her face. "Jacob, please," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I sold everything for you. The farm, my home, and I've been grateful, Martha," he cut in, checking his watch. "But that was years ago. Things change. People change." What he meant was he had changed. The shy, wounded boy I'd taken in after his parents, my dear friends, died in that car accident had transformed into this stranger. A man who valued his social status more than the woman who had sacrificed everything to give him a future. "Vanessa's friends are important business connections," Jacob continued with the practiced tone of someone delivering a rehearsed speech. "They're coming for dinner tonight. You understand, don't you? The way you talk, the stories about the farm, it's just not the impression we want to make." I understood perfectly. I was embarrassing. A simple farm woman with calloused hands and no college degree. I didn't fit into their world of cocktail parties and corporate connections. I'd been tolerated in their guest house for 3 months. But Vanessa had finally convinced Jacob that I needed to go. "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked, rain beginning to spatter against my cheeks, mingling with tears I refused to let fall. "We've arranged a room at Golden Sunset Retirement Home. It's all taken care of." He pulled an envelope from his pocket. "There's some spending money too." I'm not heartless, Martha. But he was. The boy who once crawled into my bed during thunderstorms, who I'd taught to fish and ride a horse, who sobbed against my shoulder when he got his heart broken at 16. That boy was gone. In his place stood this man in an expensive suit who couldn't even meet my eyes as he handed me what amounted to hush money. "All of this because I embarrassed your wife's friends?" I asked, still struggling to process how quickly my world had collapsed. Jacob glanced nervously at Vanessa, who gave him a small nod. "It's not just that. The thing is, Vanessa and I are trying to start a family. We need the space, and frankly, having you here, it complicates things." I stared at him stunned. "I raised you for 11 years. I was there for every nightmare, every triumph. I sold my family's farm, land that had been in my family for generations, to pay for your education. And now I'm a complication." "Martha," Vanessa called from the doorway, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Our guests will be here in an hour. The Uber we called for you should arrive any minute." I looked up at the grand house behind them. A house my farm money had helped finance, though they'd never admit it. In that moment, something inside me hardened. I had given this boy everything, and he had forgotten what mattered most. Or perhaps worse, he remembered and simply didn't care. The Uber pulled up, and Jacob looked relieved. He picked up my suitcase and walked it to the car. "It's for the best," he said, not meeting my eyes. "You'll see. Golden Sunset is very nice." "I'm 62, Jacob, not 82, I replied, taking my suitcase from him. Our hands touched briefly, and I searched his face for any sign of the boy I had raised. There was nothing. As the car pulled away, I watched Jacob hurry back to Vanessa, who immediately started talking and gesturing toward the house. I sat in silence as we drove, clutching the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was $5,000 and a brochure for Golden Sunset Retirement Home. My life had been reduced to this, a pamphlet, and what amounted to 3 months' rent. At the retirement home, a sympathetic receptionist helped me check in, casting concerned glances my way as I filled out the paperwork with trembling hands. "Is someone coming with your other belongings, Mrs. Reed?" she asked. "I don't have other belongings," I replied, the reality of my situation sinking in even deeper. "And it's Miss Sawyer. I never married." "I see," she said kindly. "Well, there's a small shop in town if you need essentials." Your room has basic toiletries to start with. My room was small but clean. A single bed, a dresser, a tiny bathroom, and a window overlooking the parking lot. I sat on the edge of the bed, finally allowing the tears to come. How had it come to this? 30 years on my family farm, then 11 years raising Jacob, and now nothing. As I unpacked my meager belongings, my hand brushed against a folded document at the bottom of my suitcase. With a jolt, I recognized it. The contract from when I sold the farm to Westlake Development. I'd kept it all these years, a reminder of my sacrifice for Jacob. I unfolded it, my tears drying as I scanned the familiar pages. And then I saw it, a clause I had forgotten, tucked away on the final page. My heart began to race as I read it once, twice, 3 times to be sure. There in black and white was a potential way out of this nightmare. But it would mean taking on Jacob, Vanessa, and possibly Westlake Development. Did I have the strength, the resources? I thought of Jacob's cold eyes as he dismissed me from his life. I thought of Vanessa's smug smile. I thought of my family's farm and all the dreams that had been built and broken there. I picked up the phone beside my bed and dialed the number for a lawyer I'd once helped when her car broke down near my property years ago. I didn't know if she'd remember me or if she could even help, but I had to try because buried in that contract was a promise and possibly my salvation. If I could prove what I suspected, Jacob and Vanessa's perfect life was about to face a reckoning they never saw coming. Martha Sawyer, is that really you? Diane Lewis's voice crackled through the phone, warm with recognition. I nearly wept with relief. Yes, it's me. I'm sorry to call out of the blue like this, I said, gripping the contract tightly in my free hand. Nonsense. I never forgot how you helped me that night, feeding me dinner and letting me stay in your guest room while the tow truck was delayed. What can I do for you? I took a deep breath. I need legal help, Diane. It's about the farm I sold to pay for my son's education. Your son, Jacob, right? I remember you talking about him. Yes, I said, my voice catching. The same son who just dropped me off at a retirement home because I embarrassed his wife's friends. There was a long pause. Tell me everything, Diane finally said, her tone shifting from friendly to professional. Over the next half hour, I explained it all, selling the farm to Westlake Development 12 years ago, using the money for Jacob's business degree at an elite university, how he'd met Vanessa there, and how they'd gradually pushed me further from their lives until today's final rejection. And now you found something in the original contract? Diane asked. Yes. There's a clause that states if Westlake failed to develop the land within 10 years as outlined in their proposal specifically for sustainable community housing, the ownership rights would revert to me minus the initial payment. I could hear Diane typing rapidly. That's what we call a reversionary interest clause. They're not common in standard real estate transactions, but they do happen. Do you have any reason to believe they didn't develop the land as agreed? I nodded, then remembered she couldn't see me. Last year, when I was still welcome at Jacob's house, I overheard him talking with Vanessa about the old farm property being worth a fortune. Now, Vanessa mentioned luxury condos being built there soon, but the contract specifically required affordable, sustainable housing. Martha, Diane's voice turned serious. If what you're saying is accurate, and if Westlake is only now developing the property for luxury condos instead of what was contractually agreed upon, you might have a valid claim to reclaim your land. Hope flickered in my chest for the first time since Jacob had uttered those cutting words. What do we do next? First, I need to see the full contract. Can you scan and email it to me? I glanced around my sparse room. I don't have a computer or scanner. No problem. I'll come to you tomorrow morning. Where are you staying? When I told her Golden Sunset retirement home, there was a pause. Pack a bag, she finally said. My guest room is still available, just like it was for me at your farm all those years ago. I'll pick you up in an hour. Later that evening, sitting in Diane's comfortable living room with a cup of tea, I felt human again. She'd reviewed the contract and was now making calls, her face growing more animated with each conversation. Martha, she said after hanging up from her last call. I've been doing some digging. Westlake Development sold the land 4 years ago to another company called Pinnacle Properties. And guess who sits on Pinnacle's board of directors? A chill ran through me. Jacob. Exactly. And furthermore, Pinnacle hasn't broken ground on the property yet, which means the 10-year development requirement in your contract has been violated. But that's not all. The sale from Westlake to Pinnacle might have been fraudulent if the reversionary clause wasn't disclosed. My head was spinning. Are you saying Jacob knew about this clause all along? Diane leaned forward. I can't prove that yet, but here's what I do know. According to public records, Pinnacle bought the land for triple what Westlake paid you. They've been sitting on it, waiting for property values to rise even more before building those luxury condos Vanessa mentioned. So my land could be mine again, I whispered. Potentially, yes, and more. If Jacob knew about this clause and deliberately kept you in the dark while benefiting from the Pinnacle deal, that's a serious conflict of interest. We could be looking at a case involving breach of contract, fraudulent conveyance, and possibly fiduciary duty violations if Jacob was acting as your financial advisor in any capacity during the original sale. I sat back, stunned. All these years, I thought I gave up everything for him, but he might have been planning to profit from my sacrifice all along. There's one more thing, Diane said, looking uncomfortable. I need to ask. Did you help Jacob with the down payment for his house? Yes, I admitted. I gave him $200,000 from the farm sale money. He said it was a loan, but there was never any paperwork. Diane's eyes flashed. That money trail will be crucial. Martha, I think what happened today, them forcing you out, might not be just about you embarrassing Vanessa's friends. They might be cutting ties because they know you could discover what they've done. The thought made me sick. Had Jacob been using me all along? Was our entire relationship, all those years of what I thought was love, just a calculated investment on his part? What do we do now? I asked, my voice stronger than I expected. Tomorrow, we file for an injunction to halt any development on the property. Then we demand all records related to the sales transactions, and we formally request an accounting of that $200,000. Diane's eyes gleamed with purpose. Martha, this isn't just about getting your land back. This is about justice. That night, in Diane's guest room, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Jacob's face, not as the cold man who had abandoned me that morning, but as the 7-year-old boy who had once clutched my hand at his parents' funeral, looking up at me with eyes full of trust and fear. Had that boy ever really loved me, or had he just seen me as useful even then? My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. I heard what you're doing. Be careful. There's more at stake than you know. Meet me tomorrow, 2 p.m. at Cooper's Coffee downtown. Come alone. I can help. I stared at the cryptic message, my heart pounding. Who knew what I was doing? Who could possibly want to help me? As I pondered this, another text came through. This one from Jacob. Martha, I've been thinking about today. I made a mistake. Can we talk tomorrow? Just you and me. Like old times, please. 2 messages, 2 possibilities. One might be a trap, but which one? And what did the anonymous texter mean by there's more at stake than you know? I clutched my phone, my mind racing. Whatever I decided, I knew one thing for certain. Nothing about tomorrow would be simple. I showed Diane both messages over breakfast the next morning. It's a trap, she said immediately, pointing to Jacob's text. He finds out we're investigating and suddenly he wants to talk after throwing you away like yesterday's trash. No way. What about the anonymous one? I asked, pushing my scrambled eggs around my plate. She frowned. That's trickier. Could be someone with insider information or another trap. If you go, I'm coming with you. It says to come alone. And I say that's not happening, Diane replied firmly. We'll compromise. I'll sit at another table close enough to intervene if needed. After filing the injunction paperwork at the courthouse that morning, we headed to Cooper's Coffee. My stomach was in knots as I pushed open the door, scanning the faces inside. The cafe was busy with the lunch crowd, conversations creating a buzz of white noise. I don't see anyone looking for me, I whispered to Diane. Take the table by the window. I'll be 3 tables away. If you feel threatened, just drop your napkin. That's our signal. I nodded and made my way to the suggested table. As I settled in, a barista approached with a steaming mug. I didn't order yet, I said, confused. Courtesy of the gentleman in the corner, she replied, nodding toward the back. I turned to look. There, partially hidden by a newspaper, sat an older man with silver hair and familiar eyes that made my heart skip. Richard Westlake, founder of Westlake Development, and my neighbor before I sold the farm. He folded his newspaper and walked over, moving with the slight limp I remembered from his old football injury. Martha, he said quietly, sliding into the seat across from me. Thank you for coming. Richard. You sent the message. I was stunned. He nodded. I heard about the injunction filing this morning. News travels fast in legal circles. Why all the secrecy? Why not just call me? Richard glanced around nervously. Because what I'm about to tell you could cost me everything. I've spent the last year gathering evidence, and I'm finally ready to come forward. Evidence of what? He leaned closer. Your son didn't just happen to end up on Pinnacle's board. He engineered the whole deal from the inside. But he wasn't working alone. Vanessa, I guessed. Yes, but there's more. My own son, Michael, was involved too. My mind raced to connect the dots. Michael Westlake had taken over his father's company about 5 years ago, around the time Jacob had finished business school. Michael and Jacob were roommates in college, Richard continued, confirming my suspicions. They plotted this together. Michael knew about the reversionary clause. I made sure it was in every contract as a matter of principle. If developers didn't fulfill their promises to communities, they shouldn't profit. So, Michael deliberately let the 10-year period expire. Richard's face darkened. Worse, 3 years ago, Michael created Pinnacle Properties as a shell company with Jacob and 2 other college friends. He engineered a sale of your land from Westlake to Pinnacle at a massively inflated price, loading my company with debt while they walked away with millions in profits. I was semi-retired by then, not paying close attention. I felt dizzy. Are you saying they stole from both of us? Yes. I've been forced out of my own company by the board after Michael convinced them I was senile. I've lost everything, Martha. My reputation, my company, my retirement security. His hands trembled slightly, and now they're about to break ground on luxury condos that will make them another fortune. Why are you telling me this? Because your lawsuit might be our only chance to expose them. He carefully slid a USB drive across the table. Here's everything I've gathered. Emails, financial records, meeting minutes, proof that Jacob knew about the reversionary clause from the beginning and deliberately concealed it from you. I stared at the small device. He used me all these years. I'm sorry, Martha. I truly am. Richard's eyes held genuine regret. I should have seen what Michael was becoming. Just like you couldn't see what Jacob had turned into. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jacob. Where are you? I've been waiting at Golden Sunset for an hour. Richard saw the message. He's hunting for you. Martha, you need to be very careful. These boys are our sons. They're not the children we raised. There's something else now. What do they want? I whispered. Control. Money. Power. Richard shook his head sadly. And they don't care who they hurt to get it. I felt Diane's presence before I saw her sliding into the chair beside me. Mr. Westlake, she said coolly. I thought that was you, Miss Lewis. He nodded. I'm glad Martha has you in her corner. What exactly are you offering here? Diane asked, ever the lawyer. An alliance, he said simply. My testimony and evidence in exchange for helping me reclaim control of Westlake Development. I built that company from nothing. I won't let Michael destroy its legacy. Diane and I exchanged glances. We need to review what's on this drive first, she said. Richard stood, wincing slightly as he put weight on his bad leg. Of course, but don't take too long. The groundbreaking ceremony for the luxury condos is scheduled for next week. Once construction starts, it gets much harder to enforce the reversionary clause. After he left, Diane and I hurried back to her office to examine the contents of the USB drive. What we found left us speechless. Email after email between Jacob, Vanessa, Michael Westlake, and others dating back years. Strategy discussions about how to handle Martha and ensure I never discovered the clause. Financial projections showing how they would split millions in profits once the luxury condos were built. And most damning of all, a recorded video meeting where Jacob laughed about using my guilt money from the farm sale to fund his MBA, knowing all along he would eventually reclaim the land through Pinnacle and make 10 times what the old lady got. I don't think I can watch anymore, I said, feeling physically ill as Jacob's face froze on the screen, caught mid-laugh. Diane squeezed my shoulder. This is more than enough. Martha, we don't just have a case for the land anymore. We're looking at fraud, conspiracy, elder abuse. I'm not elderly, I interrupted automatically. A small smile touched her lips. Sorry, force of habit with these cases. But the point stands. This is big. Criminal charges big. My phone buzzed again. Jacob, for the 3rd time today. Martha, please. I'm worried about you. Whatever you think is happening, you're confused. Let me help. You're not well. He's trying to gaslight you, Diane observed. Make you doubt yourself. Classic abuser tactic. I turned off my phone, suddenly exhausted. What do we do now? Diane's expression. That night, I barely slept, haunted by Jacob's face on that video. How long had he been planning this? Had anything between us ever been real? Around 3 a.m., I was startled awake by the sound of breaking glass downstairs. Diane appeared in my doorway in pajamas, her phone in hand. Someone's breaking in, she whispered. I've called 911. Quick, in here. She pulled me into the bathroom, locking the door behind us. We huddled in the shower stall, listening to the sounds of someone methodically searching the house. They're looking for the USB drive, Diane whispered. Heavy footsteps approached the bathroom door. The handle turned, finding it locked. Martha, Jacob's voice, eerily calm, came through the door. I know you're in there. This has gotten out of hand. Let's talk. We froze, hardly daring to breathe. The door handle jiggled more forcefully. You don't understand what you've stumbled into, he continued. This is bigger than you know. People will get hurt if you pursue this. People you care about. In the distance, sirens wailed. Jacob cursed. This isn't over, he called through the door. You raised me to be smarter than this. Remember, you taught me to never give up on what's mine. Footsteps retreated rapidly. Seconds later, we heard a car engine start and tires squealing away. I looked at Diane, her face pale in the dim bathroom light. He just threatened us, I whispered. Yes, she nodded, her voice shaking slightly. And that changes everything. As police lights flashed through the windows, I realized there was no going back. The boy I'd raised was truly gone. In his place was a dangerous stranger, one who had just made it clear he would stop at nothing to protect what he'd stolen. And I had to be ready for whatever came next. We can place you in witness protection, Detective Rivera said, sliding a pamphlet across the table. At least until the trial. It was morning. We sat in a small conference room at the police station, surrounded by the buzz of activity beyond the door. After Jacob's break-in, everything had accelerated. The police had taken our statements, collected fingerprints, and begun an investigation that quickly expanded when Diane presented copies of the USB drive's contents. I'm not hiding, I said firmly, pushing the pamphlet back. I didn't do anything wrong. Detective Rivera, a no-nonsense woman with salt and pepper hair and sharp eyes, studied me carefully. Mrs. Sawyer, these people have committed serious financial crimes. Based on last night, they're willing to escalate to violence. Your safety is my responsibility. My safety is my responsibility. I finished for her. I raised Jacob. I need to face him. Diane shot me a concerned look. Martha, think about this. I shook my head. I've been thinking about it all night. For 11 years, I poured everything into that boy. I taught him right from wrong. Somewhere along the way, he chose wrong, and I need to understand why. Detective Rivera sighed. I can't force you into protection, but I strongly advise against any contact with your son or the Westlakes. Understood, I said, though I wasn't sure I meant it. Outside the station, Diane unlocked her car. You're not planning to do something stupid, are you? I buckled my seatbelt. Define stupid. Martha. Her tone was warning. I just need answers, Diane. Not just for the case, for me. She started the engine. Well, you're about to get some. Judge Harmon granted our emergency hearing. It's set for 2 p.m. today. The courthouse was more imposing than I remembered from filing the paperwork the day before. As we climbed the steps, I spotted familiar figures at the top. Jacob and Vanessa, flanked by what appeared to be 3 lawyers. Behind them stood Michael Westlake, looking remarkably like his father, but with harder eyes. Jacob saw me and stepped forward, his expression conciliatory. Martha, that's close enough. Detective Rivera appeared at my side, seemingly out of nowhere. She must have been following us. Mr. Reed, you're under investigation for breaking and entering, threats, and multiple financial crimes. I suggest you communicate through your attorneys only. Jacob's face darkened. You've blown this completely out of proportion, he said to me, ignoring the detective. We could have worked something out privately. Like you did last night, breaking into Diane's house. I found my voice surprisingly steady. I was worried about you, he protested, but the lie was transparent now. Mr. Reed, Detective Rivera stepped between us. Final warning. One of Jacob's lawyers pulled him back, whispering urgently in his ear. They retreated into the courthouse, Vanessa shooting me a venomous glare as they passed. Inside the courtroom, Judge Harmon, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, listened intently as Diane presented our case, outlining the reversionary clause, the evidence of conspiracy, and Jacob's break in the previous night. When it was the defense's turn, their lead attorney, a slick man in an expensive suit, tried to paint me as a confused, elderly woman being manipulated by opportunists. Ms. Sawyer willingly sold her property, he argued smoothly. She received fair market value at the time. Now, years later, after the area has developed and property values have increased, she regrets her decision and is attempting to reclaim land that was legally purchased. Your Honor, Diane countered. The reversionary clause is clear. Westlake Development was required to develop the land for sustainable, affordable housing within 10 years. They not only failed to do so, but they sold the property to Pinnacle Properties, a company partially owned by MS. Sawyer's adopted son with the express intention of building luxury condominiums instead. The judge leaned forward. I've reviewed the contract, Counselor. The clause exists. The question is whether it's enforceable after the property changed hands. That's precisely the issue, Your Honor, Diane responded. The transfer to Pinnacle was made with full knowledge of the clause, which means the obligation transferred with the deed. Furthermore, we have evidence suggesting the transfer itself was fraudulent, designed specifically to circumvent the clause while enriching the defendants. She played a portion of the video from the USB drive where Jacob and Michael explicitly discussed the clause and how to ensure I never discovered it. When the clip ended, the courtroom was silent. I stole a glance at Jacob. His face had gone pale, and he was whispering frantically to his attorney. Vanessa looked like she might be sick. Judge Harmon's expression had hardened. In light of this evidence, I'm issuing a temporary restraining order preventing any development on the property until this matter is fully litigated. Additionally, I'm freezing the assets of Pinnacle Properties pending investigation. She fixed Jacob with a stern glare. And given the evidence of Mr. Reed's behavior last night, I'm issuing a protection order requiring him to maintain a distance of at least 500 feet from Ms. Sawyer. Relief washed over me, though it was tinged with sadness. We'd won this round, but the war was far from over. As we exited the courtroom, reporters had gathered in the hallway. News of the case had leaked. Flashbulbs popped as Diane guided me through them, deflecting questions with practiced ease. Outside, we nearly collided with Richard Westlake, who was waiting by a bench. "Thank you," he said simply. "It's a start. We couldn't have done it without your evidence," I acknowledged. His eyes crinkled with a sad smile. "Small consolation for all the pain our sons have caused." As we spoke, I noticed Vanessa exit the courthouse alone, walking swiftly toward the parking lot. Without thinking, I followed her. "Martha," Diane called after me, but I kept going. I caught up to Vanessa as she fumbled with her car keys, her usual composure shattered. "What do you want?" she snapped, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Haven't you done enough?" "I want to understand," I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "Did you ever see me as family, or was I always just an embarrassment to be tolerated?" She laughed bitterly. "Family? You were the chain around Jacob's neck, always reminding him of his obligation to you, flaunting your sacrifice. Do you have any idea how tired he was of hearing about that damn farm?" Her words stung, but I pressed on. "And that justified stealing from me, using my own money to finance the theft of my land? It was business," she hissed. "Jacob saw an opportunity with Michael, and he took it. That's what successful people do." "No," I said firmly. "That's what thieves do." Something flashed in her eyes. Fear perhaps, or a recognition. "You don't understand what you've started," she said, her voice suddenly lower. "Jacob has connections. Powerful people who won't let this stand." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you," she corrected, regaining some of her composure. "There's still time to drop this. Take a settlement. Disappear somewhere nice." "Why would I do that?" "Because," she said, leaning closer, "not everything is on that USB drive. You have no idea what else Jacob has been involved in. People could get hurt, including you." Before I could respond, Jacob appeared behind her. "Vanessa, what are you doing?" She straightened up. "Nothing. Let's go." As they walked away, Jacob turned back once, his expression unreadable. In that moment, I caught a glimpse of something I'd never seen before. Fear. Not of me, but of something else, something that made him desperate enough to break into Diane's house to threaten me. Back at Diane's house, now with a security system hastily installed and a police car parked outside, I told her about my conversation with Vanessa. "She was trying to scare you," Diane said. But she looked troubled. "It worked," I admitted. "What did she mean about Jacob's connections?" Diane paced the living room. "I'm not sure, but we should find out. I have a contact at the Financial Crimes Division of the FBI. Let me make some calls." That evening, as Diane worked the phones, I sat on her porch swing, watching the sunset and trying to process everything. My phone rang, an unknown number. "Hello." I answered cautiously. "Mrs. Sawyer, this is Caroline Westlake, Michael's wife." Her voice was hushed, frightened. "We haven't met, but I need to speak with you. It's about Jacob and Michael." "I'm listening," I said, suddenly alert. "Not over the phone. It isn't safe." Her voice shook. "There's more going on than you know. The money from that land deal. It wasn't just about real estate. They've been laundering money for some very dangerous people." My blood ran cold. "What kind of people?" "The kind who make problems disappear permanently," she whispered. "Please. I have documents, evidence of everything. Meeting minutes, bank transfers, names. I can bring it all to you, but I need protection. They're watching me." "We should involve the police," I began. No police yet. Some of them are involved too." Her voice had risen in panic. "Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. The Old Willow Creek Bridge. Come alone or I won't show." The line went dead. I sat frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear. Inside, I heard Diane end her own call. She appeared at the door, her expression grave. "Martha, we need to talk. My FBI contact just got back to me with some information about Pinnacle Properties. It's worse than we thought." I looked up at her, my heart pounding. "Let me guess. Money laundering." Her eyes widened in surprise. "How did you know?" "Caroline Westlake just called. She wants to meet tomorrow morning. Alone. Says she has evidence." Diane sat beside me, her face grave. "Martha, if this is true, we're not just dealing with fraud anymore. Money laundering at this level. It means organized crime. These people don't play by any rules. We understand." I watched the last rays of sunlight disappear behind the trees. "What should I do?" "We should tell Detective Rivera," Diane said firmly. "This is too dangerous." But as night fell, I wasn't sure if Caroline was right about police involvement. Who could we really trust? And what would happen to her if I didn't show up tomorrow? The quiet neighborhood suddenly felt very dark, and every shadow seemed to hide a threat. The boy I'd raised, the one I'd taught to always tell the truth, to be kind, to do the right thing, was now at the center of something far more sinister than I could have imagined. And tomorrow I would have to decide just how far I was willing to go to end what he had started. Dawn broke with a gentle mist rising from the creek below Willow Bridge. I sat in my car at the end of the old dirt road, engine off, watching the time on my dashboard click to 6:55 a.m. I hadn't told Diane where I was going. Instead, I'd left her a sealed envelope with instructions to open it if I wasn't back by noon. Inside was everything I knew about Caroline's call and the meeting location. I had, however, brought insurance, a small digital recorder in my pocket already running. Whatever Caroline shared with me today would be preserved no matter what happened next. At precisely 7 a.m., a sleek black SUV pulled up at the opposite end of the bridge. Caroline Westlake emerged, clutching a leather portfolio to her chest. She was younger than I'd expected, perhaps mid-30s, with anxious eyes that scanned the area continuously. I stepped out of my car and walked to the middle of the bridge. Caroline hesitated, then did the same. "Did anyone follow you?" she asked immediately. "No," I said. "You have something for me?" She thrust the portfolio toward me. "Everything's here. Banking records, shell companies, meetings, photos. Michael and Jacob have been laundering money for the Delgado organization for 3 years. Real estate is perfect for it. Inflated property values, cash purchases, foreign investors who never visit. Your farm was just the beginning." I opened the portfolio. Inside were dozens of neatly organized documents. Bank statements, photographs of Jacob and Michael with men I didn't recognize, transcripts of conversations, offshore account numbers. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, looking up from the papers. Her lips trembled. "Because I have a daughter. Because I finally realized I'm married to a monster. Because what they're doing is wrong." She wiped away a tear. "And because I'm dying." "What?" "Cancer. Stage 4. 6 months, maybe less." She laughed bitterly. "Funny how a death sentence clarifies your priorities. I don't want this to be my legacy, being complicit in all this." A twig snapped in the woods beyond the bridge. Caroline's head whipped around, terror flashing across her face. "Someone's here," she whispered. "We need to go now." "Wait," I said, grabbing her arm as she turned to flee. "Come with me. We'll go to the FBI together." She shook her head violently. "I can't. They'll kill my daughter. She's with my sister in Canada. That's the only reason I dared to do this. Promise me you'll make them pay. All of them." Before I could respond, a gunshot echoed through the morning air. Caroline's eyes widened in shock, a red stain blooming on her cream blouse. She collapsed against me, her weight bearing us both to the wooden planks of the bridge. "Run," she gasped, blood bubbling at her lips. I froze in horror, holding her as the light faded from her eyes. Another shot splintered the wood beside us, jolting me back to reality. Clutching the portfolio, I half crawled, half ran back to my car, bullets peppering the bridge behind me. I threw myself into the driver's seat, started the engine with shaking hands, and floored the accelerator, tires spinning on the gravel before catching. In my rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of a figure in black emerging from the trees. But I was already speeding away, Caroline's blood still warm on my hands. I didn't go back to Diane's. I drove straight to the FBI field office in the city, running red lights, constantly checking to make sure I wasn't followed. My hands shook so badly I could barely grip the wheel, and Caroline's blood was drying on my clothes. At the security desk, my appearance caused an immediate reaction. Within minutes, I was whisked to a secure room where I blurted out my story to increasingly senior agents until I found myself face to face with Special Agent Kate Mell, head of the Financial Crimes Division. "Mrs. Sawyer," she said, her voice calm but intense. "I need you to start from the beginning." For the next 2 hours, I told her everything. The farm sale, Jacob's betrayal, Richard's evidence, the court hearing, and finally the meeting with Caroline and her murder. I handed over the portfolio and my digital recorder. "You understand that you witnessed a murder," Agent Mell said when I finished. "We'll need to place you in protective custody immediately." This time, I didn't argue. Everything accelerated after that. FBI teams were dispatched to secure Caroline's body and crime scene. Others raided Pinnacle's offices and the homes of Jacob, Michael, and several other individuals named in Caroline's documents. Diane was brought to the FBI office for her own protection, tearfully relieved to find me alive. "I would have killed you myself if you'd gotten shot," she said, hugging me fiercely. Agent Mell kept us updated as arrests were made. By evening, Jacob, Vanessa, Michael, and 14 others were in custody. The charges included money laundering, wire fraud, conspiracy, and, for whoever had ordered Caroline's murder, homicide. 3 days later, sequestered in a safe house, I watched the news break nationwide. "Major money laundering ring exposed," the headlines declared. The reporters described how a brave grandmother had helped uncover one of the largest real estate money laundering operations in the state's history with ties to international drug cartels. "I'm not a grandmother," I muttered at the TV. Diane, who had insisted on staying with me in protective custody, laughed for the first time in days. A week after Caroline's murder, Agent Mell brought me news. "We've identified the shooter, a hired gun with ties to the Delgado cartel. He's in custody and talking." She hesitated. "And Jacob is offering to cooperate. Full confession, names, dates, everything. In exchange for consideration during sentencing." Something inside me hardened. What does that mean for him? Instead of potentially 50 years, maybe 20 to 25. He'd still be middle-aged when he got out. I considered this, remembering the little boy who once climbed trees in my orchard, who cried when he found an injured bird, who promised to always take care of me when he grew up. "No," I said firmly. "No deals for Jacob." Agent Mell studied me. "That's not exactly your decision, Mrs. Sawyer. Caroline Westlake died giving me that evidence. She left a daughter behind. Jacob knew exactly what he was involved in. He chose this path. He deserves the full consequences." 2 months later, I sat in a different courtroom as Jacob pleaded guilty to all charges. The deal had fallen through when evidence from Caroline's portfolio proved he was more deeply involved than he'd initially admitted. He'd been one of the architects of the entire operation. As the judge announced a 40-year sentence, Jacob turned to look at me from the defendant's table. For a brief moment, I saw a flicker of the boy I'd raised. A flash of regret, of recognition. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold mask. Through a special provision and in recognition of my cooperation, the FBI helped expedite the legal process regarding my farm. 6 months after that fateful day when Jacob had abandoned me at Golden Sunset, I stood once more on my family's land, the reversionary clause fully enforced. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to steal my land, Jacob had ultimately returned it to me. Richard Westlake stood beside me as we surveyed the rolling acres. "What will you do with it now?" he asked. I smiled, watching the sunset paint the fields gold. "Something good, something that matters." In the end, I established the Caroline Westlake Foundation, using the land to create what the original contract had intended: sustainable, affordable housing for families in need. The first resident was Caroline's daughter, Emma, now being raised by her aunt in a safe, beautiful home far from the shadows her father had cast. As for me, I built a small cottage at the edge of the property where I could watch the community grow. Richard visited often, bringing books and conversation, his quiet wisdom a balm to my wounded heart. In time, our friendship deepened into something neither of us had expected to find at our age: a second chance at companionship. One evening, as we sat on my porch swing, watching fireflies dance over the community garden, Richard took my hand. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "our children betrayed us both. They chose greed over love, power over principle. By all rights, we should be bitter. Sometimes I am, I admitted. But you turned that betrayal into something beautiful," he continued, gesturing toward the lights of the homes below. "You transformed your pain into purpose." I leaned my head against his shoulder, feeling the weight of the past few years finally beginning to lift. "I had to, otherwise, Jacob would have won. He lost the moment he said you weren't his real mother," Richard said firmly. "A real mother isn't about biology. It's about sacrifice, love, and wisdom." He squeezed my hand. "By that measure, you're the most real mother I've ever known." Tears pricked my eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of release, of acceptance. Jacob had made his choices, and I had made mine. His path had led to a prison cell. Mine had led back home, to my land, to new purpose, and to the unexpected gift of a heart healing enough to love again. The farm that I had once sold out of love for a child who betrayed me had returned to nourish a community and a future I could be proud of. In the end, that forgotten clause hadn't just reclaimed my land, it had helped me reclaim myself. And as Richard's hand tightened around mine in the gathering dusk, I knew with quiet certainty that the best chapters of my story were still waiting to be written.